here to shake the matrix, expand our minds, and make us all think. How are you guys all doing? It is a grand morning indeed, and we're going to put out some notices, let some people... Yeah, we got that going. Some more invites here. And one more. There we go. Well, it's Monday, you guys. Back to whatever we're doing on the week. It's a new beginning, new week, and it's been a grand morning. We woke up early this morning, got ourselves a nice, good rest last night, thankfully, and this morning's a little chilly, as you can tell. We're all snuggled up and warming up here. We got the dogs here snuggled around with the blankets and everything like that, but whether it's the morning and you're watching this, whether it's the afternoon. Oh, let's get these blankets. It's a little chilly. Whether it's the evening, time doesn't matter, because that's a constraint that we created ourselves. So we're going to talk about the 3 awakenings today. The death of the false, birth of eternal flame. We are going to talk about truth of our existence and go further and tear back the pages and, see what out there is next. So before anything else, let yourself arrive. That's the important thing, is coming to the place of arrival. Put your feet on the ground at the chair you're sitting in, or let your shoulders drop and your jaw unclench. And just remember, we're not here to impress anything here. You don't need to hold it together even. And you don't need to be spiritual at all. This morning is not a talk. It's not even self-help. It's not motivation either. This is an initiation space. Nothing here is meant to fix you. Nothing here is meant to even save you, actually. And what happens here is about remembering, coming to that place where we remember the truth about our designs. What has already happened to us. And if at any point your body reacts, you get heat, tears, shaking, numbness, stillness, that's not disruption, that's intelligence. And we got that. And if part of you feels like, leaving already, that's the part that knows this is real. So let's not forget that. So good morning to all of you that have come, and welcome. And good morning to you firewalkers. Let's take a moment and really feel this environment, this moment. You're not here by accident. Something in you has already survived what most people never have courage or misfortune to face. You survived the negate. That moment that when the soul turns on the false life and says, no more. Most who meet it shatter and rebuild a smaller life. You didn't. And because you survived this, you no longer belong to the sleeping world. You're awakened. And Carl Jung, he mapped hell so people could find their way back. And he said this: the images of the unconscious place is a great responsibility upon man. Jung wasn't writing some theory. He was actually writing survival notes from his own experience. Those images he speaks of, the nightmares, the symbols, the intrusive visions, those weren't glitches. They were initiatory languages that were awakening. Psychology calls them archetype. Science measures them as theta brain waves. Flooding, we got these theta brainwaves that flood the system. And shamans have always known this state. Philosophy calls it the eruption of the opposite. And spiritual traditions call them angels of destruction. Different languages, all the same event. Nature does this too. Earthquakes crack wide open and land, not to destroy it, but to actually renew it. Some of you faced near death. Some of you have gone through intense trauma in your life. And some depression. Some midlife, implosions. You're tired. Some quieter horror, and waking up one day realizing that going back to normal felt like spiritual suicide. Your psyche demolished the prison because your divine spark refused chains. So take a breath with me for a second. Hold it for 4 seconds. Let go. See that tremor you feel? That's not anxiety. That's recognition. Say this softly. This is not happening to me. This is happening for me. See, this morning, we descend through 3 awakenings. Not as concept, but as lived crossing you already, knows in your bones. This is something you experienced, in your inner being. Awaken one is the collapse, the moment your life imploded. Career fell apart, relationships disintegrated, the mirror stopped making sense. Your name felt unfamiliar in your own mouth even. That wasn't mental illness, that was ego death. The persona, the masks you learned as childhood to survive. It could no longer hold what you were becoming. Culture calls this the breakdown. Initiatory traditions call it the first death. Science shows this clearly now. The default mode network, the brain self-story machine shuts down. And we've been living our lives on these stories, these things that we believe are us and about us. And that's why you couldn't think your way out of it. You see, the machine that needed the old story was already offline. See, your heart field recalibrated, and your body knew before your mind did. Philosophers, they have always said this. Hercules says all is flux. Nietzsche said wasn't killing God. He was killing the false authority that replaced him. Eastern traditions said it plainly, not this, not that. Strip identity, strip image, strip story, and what remains cannot die. Christian mystics called this the dark night of the soul. And many of us have been there. Sufis called it the fana. Annihilation before eternal substance. Gnostics called it the exposure of the demerge, the false god of control. And nature does this brutally, forest crown, fire burns, everything, and only then do the seeds open. Do you realize seeds don't even open till they're 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit and then they open? The fires must happen. We talk about in culture, like, how much it sucks, when we have these fires. Well, that's because we've built ourselves in these zones where these natural zones are happening. See, salmon even show us that salmon died to actually give birth. Old forms liquefy into future life. And somewhere here, many of you met the moment where leaving felt easier than staying. And everyone around you said, snap out of it. Be grateful. Go back to normal. But normal was the cage. And something in you said, nah, I can't do this anymore. If you recognize that mirror, just nod. Yeah, I got it. See, you're not broken, you're initiated. There's an old warning across every lineage. Some survive the shattering and then turn back. And they rebuild the ego prettier. They take the language of awakening and use it to avoid the shadow. They become functional, successful, spiritual, articulate even, but hollow. See, the shadow descent is what separates the initiated from spiritually fashionable And that brings us to Awaken. In my second book, Awaken, the lion escapes the matrix. When the mask dies, what was exiled comes home. Rage, grief, jealousy, wilderness, power. Jung called this the shadow, and he was clear. It contains buried gold. You believe in positivity in nature? That's awesome. Most people fear their shadow because they were taught their power was dangerous. And science even shows repression destroys the nervous system. Integration heals it. I know myself, I spent years pushing down. When I finally got to this place where I was out in the desert, in the wilderness, and I could let it go, the nervous system began to heal. See, rage isn't violence. Rage is life force that was never allowed to move. Ancient traditions knew this. Tantra called it Shakti. Kabbalah called it sparks trapped in husks, and Gnostics called them archons. Not monsters, but inner tyrants formed to protect you when you were small. Now we're talking about the system and what has happened to the ego. See, the system, it's like perfectionism, people-pleasing, control, approval-seeking. They had names. Naming them weakness weakens them. You don't kill archons. You outgrow them. Nature integrates shadows too. Hyenas eat decay and birth life. Scorpions die and molt larger. Some of you spent months and years in emotional deserts. Therapy that tried to calm you down felt insulting. Anything that asked you to stabilize before you transformed was asking you to abort yourself. And eventually, even shadow wasn't enough. Something deeper demanded death. See, this phase doesn't feel symbolic. It feels terminal. The false self liquefies. The body rebels. Loved ones beg you to return, but something in you refuses. Shine shows entropy spikes order collapse. Not because it failed, but because it competed its function. Philosophers agreed. Creation requires annihilation. Alchemy knew it, and Negrito then gold. And Gnostic texts mapped it as the soul crossing 7 stripping gates. And this isn't belief, this is memory returning, and you pass through the fire. And what survived cannot be destroyed. After fire, after the soul doesn't rush back, it withdraws. Careers die, friends group dissolves, and noise fades. This isn't loneliness. Loneliness wants company. This wants truth. Psychology calls it individuation. Spirituality calls it the desert. Every awakened figure entered it. Nothing lives emerges without time in the dark. Seeds wait. Whales migrate alone, and stars gestate in void. And somewhere in the silence you heard it. I am enough. Not arrogance, completion. Now relationships change. Some fall away. Some deepen. Some end. Not punishment, graduation. Post-awakening relationships can't be built on cages. Old roles dissolve. The provider, the peacemaker, the caretaker. Transcendent unions demand mirrors, not masks. Some walk away, Bless them. Better lonely truth than comfortable lies. Your primary partnership is the self-spark. When that marriage is intact, others magnetize or repel naturally. No chasing, no convincing. Just resonance. See, awakening isn't personal. It only feels that way at first. One embodied nervous system changes others. Nature knows this. Oaks feed forests underground. Coral heals regions. You don't save the world by effort. You become the frequencies. Look at one being real imagined. May your spark remember itself. Your life is a teaching. And you didn't survive the negate to hide. You survived to raise the field. So be undeniable. Remember, you're more than you think. Peace and love, you guys. Make sure you do one thing towards your dreams every single day. It brings you one step closer. Make sure you recognize you're valuable and you matter, and you're all unique puzzle pieces, a part of the ultimate puzzle of the cosmos. Hang in there. Peace and love.